So I'm pleased to announce that we have a special guest on this webinar today. So before we get into all the details of the elements of a recruitment plan, I'd like to announce our special guest. I'm pleased to welcome Max Spinberg, our newest director of AmeriCorps Vista. Max is here joining us and he wants to share a few words. So Max, take it away.
Thank you very, very much, Jessica, and for our partners, Jessica and Scott, in pulling this together, and especially for all of you who have taken time to hop on this call and the webinar itself. I am grateful. I am just starting week 4 of my tenure as Director of AmeriCorps Vista, and am very, very excited. I am pumped that I'm able to serve in this capacity and be able to work with all of you directly and most of you indirectly in making sure that our VISTA members are deployed around the country, addressing poverty and building capacity and doing all the things that you and your communities need to have happen. I started my career more than 20 years ago as a VISTA supervisor, so know some of the challenges that you face, especially around recruitment. I was an employee of the Congressional Hunger Center, which was a national nonprofit organization that became a national initiative, and we had 20 VISTAs at 10 different sites around the country working on anti-hunger programs. Could be with a food bank or otherwise, and then they did a stint here in DC as well. So recognize the challenges of finding good, talented folks to serve as VISTAs, and that's the challenge that we hope to help you all meet. I literally just came out of a meeting with the new mayor of Hartford, Connecticut, which is one of the 3 original sites that VISTAs went after being sworn in by President Johnson 50-plus years ago. And he is interested in getting the best VISTAs he can for his Promise Zone designee there in the capital city of Connecticut. And as you can all attest, sometimes that's having somebody who's intimately aware of the community, so recruiting locally, but sometimes you want to have a good mix of folks who also bring skills and perspectives and experience from outside. So that's why we leave the recruiting to you, but provide some help and assistance and tools in doing that nationally. And I'm excited that, again, you'll be able to hear a little more of that process and those resources from Jessica and her team. And we have just stood up last year a whole marketing outreach and recruitment team at headquarters, not to run it all by any means, but rather to come alongside of you and provide some of that assistance. So again, with the focus of today's webinar and call, I am grateful that you would spend a little time understanding more of what we have to offer and how to go through the process. I have been through it before, literally and figuratively, so remember well some of the recruits that turned out to be successes and some of the ones that got away, and I am excited that you are part of the VISTA family and making this all work. I will wrap up and turn it back to Jessica, but just wanted to share that yesterday for Martin Luther King Day, it really was a day on and not a day off, and helped to lead a service project in rural Virginia, packaging over 6,000 meals for a backpack program feeding hungry kids in Shenandoah County, Virginia, as well as the local food pantry. And it was just great to have about 50 volunteers, from a 4-year-old pre-K student to a 92-year-old great-grandmother and everyone in between, and that's some of the impact that VISTAs will have, can have, do have in your communities. So I'm, again, excited. I'm grateful that Jessica asked me to come and say a few words at the outset of your webinar, and I wish you all the success. And with that, Jessica, thank you.
Thank you, Max, and thanks so much for joining us. One thing that I'd like to encourage everyone on this webinar to check out, recently Max had an article posted on the Huffington Post. I have just posted that link into the chat, so please check that out. And once again, thank you, Max. We're very excited that you're here, that you're joining us for VISTA for your 4th week, and all the great things to come. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all once again. So I'd like to officially welcome you all to today's webinar, Elements of a Recruitment Plan. I am Jessica Birch, and I am a VISTA Training Coordinator with the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A at the end of the session. Also joining us are Scott Weinrobe and Jessica Knight from our partners at Education Northwest, who have helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You'll also see them in the chat and Q&A to help address questions you may have during the session. I'm also pleased to welcome our guest speaker for today, Cynthia Henderson. Cynthia Henderson is a leadership development expert, coach, and trainer skilled in curriculum design, facilitating interactive seminars, webinars, and workshops while keeping leaders and teams focused on accomplishing stated measurable outcomes via effective communication styles and clarity regarding roles and responsibilities. Cynthia has been a pre-service orientation and supervisors orientation facilitator for over 20 years and has served as the Southern Cluster Regional Team Leader for 15 years. Additionally, Cynthia was a supervisor of VISTA's Facing the Dilemma as You, of recruiting and retaining the best possible candidates for her program. So, here's what we hope that you'll get out of this webinar today. We'd like you to be able to outline the elements of a recruitment plan. What exactly goes into recruiting VISTAs and making a plan for that? We'd also like you to be able to describe the tools and key milestones to support your candidates through the application process. Additionally, we'd like you to be able to populate a recruitment timeline based on the anticipated pre-service orientation date. And last, but definitely not least, we'd like you to identify who you plan to target for recruitment, where to find quality candidates, and how to recognize and overcome barriers. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia to start us off. So Cynthia, take it away.
Thank you, Jessica. And I thank all of you for joining us here today. I really want to also thank you for sharing some of your challenges that you face with VISTA recruitment, the process that you shared during registration. And I want you to know that those comments have been most helpful in helping us to share this webinar so that we can really fully meet your needs. Now, I want to say that we may not be able to respond to all of the questions or concerns that you outline in this session, but there'll be many more throughout the year that will address your particular issue. But we will focus today on recruitment. And as we move through this, we really do hope that some of your needs can be targeted and addressed so that you can have a more complete plan of how you will function and recruit effective VISTAs. So this is a good place to acknowledge also that we have a variety of approaches for recruitment, depending on your role. Some we have intermediaries, some single site supervisors, some sub-site supervisors. We also have some leaders on the call. And so depending on your project, your role may change, but the process for recruitment is the same. And whatever you plan to do, focusing on marketing, planning first, then marketing, screening, interviewing, selecting, and then doing the onboarding. So now let's look at some of these stages of the VISTA recruitment process. And as you see on the screen that we have up, it is important to look at all of those components. But before you do that, you got to be clear. Clarity. Clarity about what are your project goals and outcomes, and looking at it from the 3-year perspective. Most of you will have this just for a 3-year period unless you are a national project. And during that 3-year period, you may have certain needs for year 1. What are those skills and needs that you have? Year 2 may be different or the same, and year 3 may be even more different. So honestly looking at it, what goals and outcomes do you want to achieve? And then looking at, so what are those special skills and knowledge that you need to have, the knowledge base that you need to have to fill those positions? Now, here is something that I really want to caution you about, and having gone through this, I, at the beginning, thought that the VISTAs that I got will become ready, equipped to go out and just handle all of the problems in the community. perfectly equipped from the moment they got there. That was an illusion. What it actually turned out was that they had some of the skills that I wanted and needed for the position, but some of that I had to train them with, and I just had to adjust my expectations. And doing that makes a whole lot of difference. So identifying what special skills and knowledge needed for the position, but also what you absolutely have to have, those top 5 responsibilities and top 5 personal effectiveness competencies. And I want to say a word about the personal effectiveness competencies. While people may be really good at functioning with a computer, they may have not so good interpersonal skills. So what is it that you need? If they need to go out and connect with people in the community and communicate effectively and represent your program, ability to communicate effectively with human beings is a key personal effective competency that they need. And to just be clear about that and not someone who will sit behind the computer all day and not interact with human beings. So I think Scott just shared a link to the webinar materials that will focus on how to tailor recruitment practices and messages to find people that have personal effectiveness competencies needed for your project. So Scott, I think you've done that. Yes. So now looking at our next slide, we're going into the area of planning. Again, before you do anything, you've got to plan. Do you want to build a house? You have to have some blueprints, the plan, the foundation. Otherwise, whatever you build is fine or will crumble. So what is it that you want? Who is it you're trying to attract? When do you need them to be there? Where are you going to find them, and how in the world are you going to find them? I suggest looking at the end. Begin with the end in mind. So if it's the very end, when do you need them to start? Plan backwards. And planning backwards means that you got to take into account what your workload is, understanding you have a very busy life. This is not your only responsibility. And having been that supervisor where I had to do a whole lot of other things, and this too, this was added on to it, you just have to figure out how do you plan effectively to make full use of your time and also engage the help of those that other people that can help you as well. So planning backwards, take into account when are the holidays, when is your office closed, what time frame do you need to be considering, what is required to achieve this desired outcome. What exactly goes into it? Who's going to help you? If everyone is engaged in doing their own thing in your office, so how are you going to slot the time to have someone to help you and to bring this together? Where do you find good candidates? Now, this is an area where a lot of you mentioned in the registration process and your challenges, a lot of you are having problems finding good quality candidates, especially in rural locations. So we're going to talk more about that. Where do you find these people, and what do you say to get them? Understanding the timelines are critical. So that is a crucial area, having your timelines, understanding what timeline you have. And so as we move to the next slide, that helps us to really be clear about what it is we're trying to achieve. So we're moving to our next slide, and we have our first poll question, which does focus on, so what do you think is the most important day to know when building your recruitment plan? So now on the side of your screen, you see several questions, and if you could identify or just check the ones that you think, we will share your answers. What do you think is the most important date to know when building your recruitment plan? Let's take a moment to complete that. We've got 30 seconds more. So,
thank you, Cynthia. So as we wait for these to calculate, make sure you just click on there. What do you think the most important thing is? The start date for your VISTA, on-site orientation, or if you're not sure and you want to learn more, just take a few seconds and get those as we wait here for the poll results to come in. All right, it looks like that poll has ended, and we're just waiting here for those results. All right. So we got the results in, and the majority of you said that the start date of the VISTA's pre-service orientation is the most important date to know. So this is correct. We will talk more about timelines as we go forward. But first, Cynthia is going to walk us through a few other key inputs that you will need to build your plan. So Cynthia, I'll let you take it from here.
Yes, thank you. So the start date, yes, indeed, that is the most important date. And the start date for the PSO is, let me back up to ask this question. So what is a PSO? Some of you may know, some of you don't. Let me explain quickly for those of you that don't know. The PSO is a pre-service orientation, and that's held periodically throughout the year in different parts of the country. And this is an opportunity for VISTA candidates to assemble, to network, to connect, to build the bonds for national and community service that usually lasts throughout their lifetimes. It's also the place where they learn about AmeriCorps VISTA. They understand the do's and the don'ts. They understand that VISTA's mission is to alleviate poverty. That's the core mission. And they also meet others who have that as their focus, either read about it or actually experiencing poverty, and who also are committed and passionate about addressing this. It is also the place where they learn some skills to assist them with communication and problem solving, and learn the skills of volunteer recruitment and resource mobilization, things that they need when they start their assignments. So it's usually held before the VISTA candidates are sworn in and begin their year of service. So the other thing on our recruitment plan input is the number of VISTAs that you want or need or have been approved to go and recruit. So understanding how many you need, what will they be doing? To start to think through that, what exactly will take place? And so this is a place also where you can start to look at really going to the vistacampus.gov for the opportunity to look at your planning and your worksheet to help really focus on the task, who will do what, when will it be done. And it's also important to think about when do they start, the start date for the VISTAs. Start date is important. And sometimes I see people, that can be a challenge. And some of you have said, okay, if I'm recruiting for this period and there's a lag time, what do I do? Our recommendation is try to recruit closer to the time when they would actually be starting, which will reduce the lag time between that. But being clear, when is that start date? And making sure that it does not coincide with the time when the direct supervisor is going on vacation. I've seen that experience as well. That's not good for the VISTAs coming on board and not good for you starting off with them. So things to consider as you move through that. But I do think that Scott has be adding the VISTA recruitment checklist that that will be on the site, and something, there it is, so that you can really look at how you can customize your approach to make sure that you have focused on what needs to be done, who's going to do it, and when is it going to be done, and how will you know that it's done. Scott, do you have anything else you want to add to that? Or I think that's it. Okay. Well, having nothing else to add to that, let's look at the plan elements. So the plan elements, this would outline your marketing, screening, interviewing, selection, and steps. So, and we're going to go through those processes, but this is a place where you really report it. You look at your recruitment task list. So be specific. Sometimes we lump things together and it's all inclusive, and it really takes more time than we've allotted because we've kind of grouped it together. I'm suggesting that you be specific and really outline what needs to be done, who needs to do it, and when does it need to be done, and to keep track of that, especially if you have more than one VISTA. It can all get confusing, and I'm not sure who's doing what, when, where, and how, and believe me, that comes across to the VISTAs. So being as organized as you can be from the beginning really does help and make a difference. And also being clear who is going to help you. Now, if you are a single site supervisor and you're a one-person office, then you're the person that's going to help you. So how do you make sure you have enough time to do this? My suggestion is just document everything, plan it out, when you're going to do it and how it's going to be done, and the timeline. The other thing to consider is preparing for the interview. Some of you will be interviewing people electronically. Some you may use Skype. Some you may hopefully not just email, but to have a telephone conversation with them. Sometimes you will have the opportunity to interview them in person, depending on where they're coming from. So to think through, what questions do you need to ask them? Are the questions different on the telephone than they are in person? Do you need a writing sample? If you're having them to do writing, do you need a sample of that? I have seen people not get that, and what has shown up on site has not been quite what they were expecting. So just to think about that, and also as you plan all of this, considering the timelines within your own agency and the work that you have scheduled to do. So the next slide does focus on timing. Timing is critical. The PSO date, as you identified earlier, is the most important date to focus on. Again, plan backwards from there. So if this is when they need to appear, what needs to be done before then? We suggest 120 days before the PSO date is a good time frame to begin your recruitment. However, this may change or need to be expanded if you are dealing with intermediaries and sub-sites, if everyone has to be involved in making that decision. Now, again, some of your challenges outlined during the registration was that it was a challenge working with some sub-sites and them understanding and responding to the getting the applications in and getting the process moving. My recommendation for that would really be to look at having a conversation with the sub-site and helping people to understand how important this is and what their role is in it and what the timelines are and how important it is to be held accountable for doing whatever it is you've identified by that timeline. If not, you've gone through all of this work and you may lose the good candidate that you're seeking. So having a conversation with the sub-sites and the intermediaries, that joint conversation, being clear about what you're trying to do together, and then track the timeline, the recruitment deadlines, to make sure that everything is working as it should be. And Scott has also added the link for getting the VISTA member recruitment planning calendar. That's on your screen as well, and you can download that as well. So now we move on to the other component, the second one, being market. Marketing for your VISTA. Where in the world do I find a good person? The person most suited for my program. And we're going to talk about the VISTA assignment description, which we'll refer to as the VAD, the service opportunity listing, which is crucial, outreach and advertising, and some of the challenges that go with that. Our next slide does indicate the key component to all of this is the VAD, a believable VAD. Now, the VAD is simply the job description, what it is they're going to be asked to do, and it has to be believable. And there's going to be a session, I believe, in February that's going to focus more on writing believable and clear VADs so that you can attract the candidates and also be clear about it. But let me share that as a PSO facilitator, we see a lot of VISTAs come to PSO with VADs that are so weighted and all-encompassing that they're overwhelmed. To be as clear as possible about what it is you expect for them to do without trying to put everything but the kitchen sink in there would help. That helps to reduce the anxiety, but also the appreciation of what is expected. And again, some of this can be adjusted as you move along. To get the VAD approval by the state office is a crucial component to this. Once you have a clear one written, And then the next part is to match the personal competencies to the needs that you have, and then to decide, do you want a community-based person or a national recruit? So the question with the community-based person or the national recruit is, do you want someone that can bring experience or skill set beyond your community, or is it more important for them to have a good working knowledge of your community? Here's what I do need to share in this part, and that is be clear and be realistic about the candidate that you are looking for. You are not looking for the person who would come into your office ready to go and get the traditional job in your office. This is not a traditional job and should not be expected to be that. This is the service opportunity where they bring their skills, talents, and abilities, and to use those to help build capacity within your programs to alleviate poverty. You have a role in that as well, to decide whether or not this person is someone that you want to really be, do you want to teach them what they need to know, or do they need to come prepared with everything? And if you think they need to come prepared with every single thing to do the work and just hit the ground running, you're setting yourself up for a disappointment. Some come like that, but very few. In a lot of cases, you're going to have to teach. So adjusting your expectations at the beginning, you want high quality, but what is it that is the most important thing that they need to do, and what can you train them to do, and being clear about that. So as we move on to creating a service opportunity listing, this is the first place that this will go when they are looking for AmeriCorps Vista opportunity. They will look at this. So this has to say who you are, where you're located, what will they be doing, what attributes and skills you're looking for, why should people join your project, and key, what's in it for them. Not what's in it for you, what's in it for them. This really does help to zero in on attracting the best candidate. Looking at your start and end dates for your project, and also how that aligns with the PSO date. So all of that has to be in concert. Again, if you're in a school setting and you're not going to be in school during the summer months, you wouldn't have them start in the summer. You would try and align it closer to a PSO date that begins at the end of the summer, starting the new school year. And how does someone get more information about you? And so here's something that I have to share with you, that in your listing, there's a teaser in the first 2 lines for your opportunity listing, service opportunity listing, that has roughly 200 characters. And that is the first place that people will look. And that has to pop. That has to be creative, energetic. It has to make people want to go to the next part where they find out more about you. You can't get to the next part without that teaser just drawing them in. So if that's not your strong suit in creating language in that 200-character intro, find somebody that has that as a skill set and get them to help you with that. Very, very creative way of getting people engaged in that. And so we next look at our next slide, and that is marketing and outreach. So as we look at marketing and outreach on our next slide, we see that we have some information about member demographics. So let's give you a moment just to look at that, the member demographics, and something may pop out for you. In here, we're going to identify some marketing strategies, identify the network for marketing, develop your message, and get approval. But look at those demographics. So these demographics are Vista's currently serving, and I think this 2015 data. 74% are female, 73% are local recruits. So people who are having challenges with whether I get people locally, it seems that you have local people that are being recruited. The age group, usually they're under 34 to 78%, and the education background, 61% have bachelor's degrees. Let me share that this is what has been recruited. look at what's missing. So what's missing is, now if you're getting everyone, 78% of them are under 34. What I've seen and the experience I've had, and I've been doing this for many years, that a lot of those are coming straight out of college, or they're making the transition from undergraduate to graduate degrees, and there's an opportunity for some. But there's a whole area that's not been really tapped, and that's the 9%, 50 to 91. I'm not sure we get anybody at 91, but that some people volunteer at that age. And that's the recent retirees. These are the baby boomers. And the baby boomers coming on board, that is a wonderful opportunity because 44 million people are over 65 and older, and they are beginning to retire. And the Massachusetts Institute of Technology study was done to say that people are retiring more, and they want to reinvent themselves. And they want to figure out how they can really have more flexibility, but still be contributing members of society and also gain some income from it. So there's a great opportunity for you to recruit people in that age group. The question may be, can you supervise them? Are they, what are maybe some of the challenges, but also what are some of the opportunities? Something to think about. So the ones that have been recruited, this is what has been done. You can do something different, but you're going to have to really market your efforts to do something different. And so let's move on to our next slide of marketing and advertising. That this is an opportunity where you post your listing, and you can post your listing on AmeriCorps, the AmeriCorps portal. You can also advertise it by word of mouth, online, print. Be prepared to market your program to potential candidates, but not just to the candidates, to your friends, your network, to reach out. The traditional way, if you're having challenges or have had challenges doing it, okay, that way may not be the most effective way. Think outside the box. If you were trying to find someone, or put yourself in their place, if you were looking for something, what would be in it for you? What would you get out of it? What would attract you to that? And then start to tailor it based on that need. Colleges and universities are great places. The career placement offices, great places, houses of worship, some alumni, Vista alumni and friends, but consider your network. But also consider, do you want to have high tech or high touch? And high tech, you may be doing everything electronically. High touch may be people to people, connecting with your network. Who do you know? So this leads us to the next poll question, which is, which of these marketing techniques have worked well for you? So we have some on the right side of your screen. One is word of mouth. Second, AmeriCorps portal, Craigslist.org, Idealist.org, Facebook, Twitter, other. I'm not sure. I will start tracking where they heard about us. So I'd like for you to share. Take a moment to share which of these techniques have worked well for you.
Thank you, Cynthia. So as we wait for everyone to answer and for those poll results to come back, we did ask a question here sort of related to recruitment, and it was a question we asked at the beginning of the session about where do you find, where do you look for carrying people to serve as VISTA. So a lot of you said they utilize colleges and universities. Someone even, I think it looks like they're on their own college campus. So someone mentioned that they recruit from their own campus, which is perfect. Let's see, someone else here said that they're sending promotional materials to career services offices at colleges and universities. So that's a great way too. Students go in there all the time, so that's fantastic. And so most of these are universities, which is a great place to find candidates. Based on the poll results that you guys all suggested here, it looks like a lot of people do recruit through the My AmeriCorps portal, so doing those opportunity listings in the system. Some other of you said word of mouth, which is always a great way, as Cynthia mentioned. Other high ones there are Craigslist, Idealist, and other. So, you know, depending on where you're at and how you decide to do that. So I think the poll was a little quick there, so I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways that other people do it that aren't listed here. But I'm going to turn it back over to Cynthia to take us through the next slide.
Okay. So whatever you do, be clear with your advertising. And I said it before, but I cannot say this enough. You've got to consider what's in it for them. And some of the challenges with recruitment have been that you've been looking at it from your lens, your perspective, which makes perfect sense. What do we need and what do we need to get done and who can best help us do this? That's one way. Now, turn the lens around and look at it from their perspective. Let's see. And I'm going to look at two different perspectives. One college student just graduating, and they may decide they want to go to graduate school, but may not have all of the money or the time or the resources, and this may be the perfect opportunity in alignment with what they want to do before graduate school or law school or whatever kind of school you want to go to, that the AmeriCorps stipend or educational award may help them as they move forward. Some of you have talked about the income restrictions, and I hope you do know that in 2015 that now the VISTAs can work as well. They got to get permission from their supervisors, but they can work and also be a VISTA. So again, school may be the perfect option for that, for them to do both of these. As you're looking at just an example, if someone's an English major and they want to go to law school, perfect if they would do this in between, looking what's in it for them. They need the interim, they need the skills, the qualification, and the experience. This is a perfect opportunity, perfect match. Now let's look at retirees, people who are just retiring from the jobs. Okay, so some of them, they want to retire. They want more flexibility. They don't really want to do what they did before. They want to do something different. There's something just happened just this year, 2016. Social Security Administration raised the limit for people who are retiring and getting Social Security. The limit for the income they could receive was around $22,000 last year. This year, January 1st, it went up to $41,000. So they could then do AmeriCorps VISTA and get their Social Security without a problem. Great place to look for people, especially for retirees that are still young enough to be engaged, still want to make a difference, but they need a little flexibility. And the overriding concern for a lot of people, they need flexibility. What's in it for them? What do you need? What do they need? How do you make a match? And think outside the box. And there are lots of other places you can look. Alumni chapters of sororities and fraternities. That's a good place to look. Houses of worship is a good place to look. So we're going to look at the next slide and just look at some of the places where we can start to look for where do we find these people that we need really good candidates. And a lot of you said, I'm in a rural setting. Where do I find them in the rural setting? One person I think said is in San Francisco Bay Area. One person in Montana. Why would you go to Montana to begin with? Why are you there? Wherever you're there, someone else may want to come too. What's in it for them? Why would they want to come there? What's exciting about it? How can you build up Montana? Like that's the place you want to go, especially if AmeriCorps VISTA is paying the transportation to and from there. Why should they want to go there? San Francisco Bay Area, yes, it's expensive to live there. Think outside the box. Housing is the problem. What's in it for them? How can you get them there? So looking at that, the urban and the rural centers, where do you find these people? If in the urban areas, yes, you would have a heavy reliance on social media. My AmeriCorps portal, retirees, and you can go retirees from federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies, corporations, perfect. Schools, high schools, trades, community, four-year colleges and universities, civic organizations, social, sororities and fraternities in the urban areas. Rural areas a little different. Rural areas may be more high touch, not so much high tech. So word of mouth, how would you connect with people at the community center, other volunteers and other nonprofits? The best way to get someone to do this is someone who's already doing it to recommend somebody else. So alumni of AmeriCorps VISTA would be a great opportunity. Houses of worship. They know people who are interested and want to volunteer and to to do this as a service commitment. High schools, colleges, universities, civic and social organizations, and retirees. So it just depends on where you are, tailoring it to what they need. So let's look at our next chat question. So what other locations or strategies have you used to effectively recruit quality VISTA candidates? So let's take a moment for you to share that in the chat room. Okay, so our chat, and Jessica, if you could guide us through that process.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Cynthia. So please enter your ideas in the chat box. What other locations or strategies have you used to effectively recruit quality VISTA candidates? Make sure you send it to all participants. We want to make sure your comments are visible to everyone, so please make sure that it is to everyone, and make sure that it's in the chat panel and not the Q&A panel. So as these come in, I'm going to read some out. So what are other strategies? So Paige here said that she does volunteer match. So does Marie. We also show LinkedIn, and local nonprofits are big. Let's see here, Sign Up Genius, which I've not heard of, but I think it's probably a website there that's good for recruiting. Contacting career counselors at universities. Universities have definitely been a major theme on this webinar chat, so that's always a great way to find some quality candidates. Local market nonprofit associations, newsletters. Newsletters are a great way to get out to your members. They may know of a friend who would be a great VISTA, so those are always another great word of mouth technique. Speaking to seniors in service learning classes, that's a great idea as well. People who are just coming out of school, who are looking for something maybe to do in between college years, that's a great technique. Let's see here, what else have we got? The eBenefits VA job board, so recruiting towards veterans is always a great way as well. Going through the VA, definitely a way to get in touch with a lot of those veterans. Chamber of Commerce, that's always another great way. They usually have a list of nonprofits in the area, different contacts that you might not have thought of, so that's a great resource. Recommendations from board members to board members of your organization. And then social work, schools and communities, so definitely schools of social work, having civic-minded people, that's a great way to recruit. And yeah, most of these, a lot of the great repeats, weekly newsletters, whether that's hard copy or e-newsletter, local civic organizations, those sorts of things. So these are great strategies. So Cynthia, I'm going to turn it back on over to you.
Okay, yes. So this, there are a lot of opportunities, and it's really thinking outside the box. And the traditional ways work, but again, looking at what's in it for them and how could you attract them to become a part of your organization. And if you were in their shoes, turn it around. Where would you go to look? And something that has not been brought up, but a lot some elements have been shared, and that is to look at your local papers, newspaper, radio and television, to do community service announcements. But it's more than just a community service announcement for a VISTA. It would be sharing what is your program doing, how is it doing, and it gets AmeriCorps VISTA members to help facilitate that. And if anyone wants to be a part of that, that is an opportunity for them to join as well. So it's not just talking about how to get a VISTA, but also promoting your program too. Just something to think about. Your networks are crucial. How would you do it? So there are some barriers to recruit. And barriers sometimes we get stuck with that and we don't move forward. So I just invite you to talk about the barriers, but then we're going to look on the flip side of that. What can we do about it? So some of the barriers include the candidates' accessibility, computers, and technology, especially in rural communities. They may not have a computer with internet access in their homes, and so that may be a challenge. Some of the process itself is all computerized now, so that may scare off some people, how to get them comfortable with it. Not everyone, but some. Some barriers will be clarity about whether you want national recruits or community-based recruits. What do you want? What do you need? What is most important to you? And where would those skills be best found? The stipend at the poverty level, that could be a barrier, but it could also be a plus. Again, it's the ability to work now has been added to the mix, so that may mitigate against some of that challenge. The location of the project, turn it around. How do you make this appealing? And the housing for national recruits, that could be a challenge. Ineffective presentation of a win-win. And so I would just encourage you that as you're ready to talk about this, whether on the phone or on Skype or wherever you're going to be sharing it, that you really think through where are the win-wins? What's in it for them? What do you need, or what's in it for them? And how can you make this work for the short term so that everybody's needs are met? And some barriers could be the good job market. Where there's a good job market, people may not be as open and receptive to doing service work. They may want to do the traditional employment. So again, being clear about what's in it for them. So how do we turn these barriers into opportunities? Access to technology, well, you bring them to your office to fill out the paperwork or take them to the library. Computerized intake, you help them complete it. National recruits or local recruits. Relocation information and the use of your knowledge about the area. So now relocation, which relates to why would they come to Montana? And really to play up what's good about it. Why did you go there? Why does anybody go there? Why are people drawn to that area of the country? What do they want to achieve? And I don't mean to pick on Montana, but someone mentioned that in the beginning, and I just want to share that while it may seem a challenge, it can be a plus if you present it in a way that's appealing. Why would anybody go there? And really work with that. What are the pluses of that part of the country? Why would anybody want to get engaged? And really make it appealing. The stipend, 66 plus, you need income, and that is for people who are retiring. Again, that the stipend is there, but Social Security has raised their level of income that you can achieve. College graduates, some of them in between college and undergraduate and graduate, they made that income. People who need to supplement their family income may be more community-based. So where is the win-win for that? So this may not be the beginning or the end, but this may help you to get to where you need to go. The location of your project, a new adventure, explore the country, especially if America or Vista is paying to get you there. Wonderful. I saw some people going to Hawaii, and I was trying to think, now how could I get to Hawaii for a service project? Fabulous assignment. There also the housing of national recruits. Now that could be a challenge if you think inside the box of traditional housing. Traditional housing, one-person apartment, in a high-income area, yes, that's almost impossible. But if you consider connecting them with alumni in the area, connecting them with RSVP, which is Retired Senior Volunteer Program, a component of Senior Corps. If you consider connecting with people in your community that you know that need housing, or taking in people that need housing, you don't have the arrangements, but make the connection. It's like someone coming into your community that needs help. All you're doing is setting it up and making the connection. I have to tell you, I have seen way too many visitors come to PSO fretting, concerned, anxious because they did not have any place to stay. That is troubling. That is Anxiety City, USA. That's not necessary. We can help them with that process, but we got to be aware, which means you may have to take on another role of just being a liaison or someone to help make that connection. So if you want good candidates to come in, you may have to do a little bit more than you've traditionally done to get them in. Understanding that this is a national resource. You are going to take them to the next level. Okay, so they're only going to be there a year, maybe 2 years, depending on your program. But what an investment and what a difference you're making with them and in their lives and what you've done. and highlighting the win-wins of your presentation, what's in it for them. And in any good job market, I talked about this with PSO as well, that with the Vistas come in, a lot of them are coming to AmeriCorps Vista, and they have degrees, but they have no experience. This is a place where they can get a lot of great experience. What's in it for them? Why should they do this? It's a way to pay off their college loans and a way to gain some skill sets in between college. So, moving to the next component, and that is screening. So, you've identified them, you've planned, you've marketed, now you've got to screen them. In order to screen them, you need to know the terms and conditions of service. They will know it, but they may not know all of the answers, so they're going to connect with you. You've got to know this. The pre-screening process, round one application, round one where you narrow down the applicant pool, that's all crucial. Here's the problem, and the problem you need to be aware of. If you're a single site, that's fine. Just move it right along. If you are a sponsor or an intermediary with sub-sites, the challenge is that sometimes people don't really understand the time limits, and they drag their feet and they don't move the paperwork through as fast, and by the time they get through and decide on the person has lost interest and gone someplace else. If you are a sub-site or the intermediary, you need to really talk to each other so that you're clear what is it that you've got to do, what everybody's role is, and how to do it in a quick way to get it done so that you get that candidate on board quickly. So the next screen really looks at just a continuation of that process. How do you narrow them down and rate them? And then finally, you actually do the interview. And so as you are doing the interview, and you can do the interview either in person or on phone or the video. The first round of interviews, if you're the only person to do it, that makes it easier. But sometimes you do a second round of interviews. How do you keep people engaged in that process? Now, here's something that I had to learn the hard way, because I went through all of that. And then my top pick decided that they wanted to go someplace else. I was frustrated and angry. But that's a reality. So my recommendation is yes, you have your top pick, but you need to have your backups in place just in case, because anything can happen. So how to make sure, and you've got to be honest with them. You've got to tell them you're my first choice, but okay, here's, you have the next choice. Now, there's a tactful way to say that, and I'm sure you come up with it, but there's a way to say you got to let them know you got to have some backups. And Scott has a link for the chat that will help with that as well. And so we now move to the next area, selection. So conducting reference checks, and reference checks, I would strongly suggest that as with the interview, asking behavioral type questions with the interview. When did you do this? How did that happen? What happened when you went through that process? Versus did you do this, yes or no? The reference check should be the same, behavioral type questions. So tell us about when they actually went through the process. That will give you a good handle on the kind of person that they are. Some of you said you had challenges with people who didn't keep their word. This information will help you, give you some insight during the reference check. If you do behavioral type interview questions with them, it'll give you some idea whether or not they're a person that can be trusted. So now you're ready to offer your candidate the position, and then look at outlining the next steps for them, including the timeline when service will start and what is the required documentation. So now we're ready to go to PSO registration. Oh my goodness, we're ready to go. And so the paperwork that's necessary for direct deposit, getting them ready, going to the Vista campus and log in and do the web activities and print out their PSO. Please print out their PSO, have it ready for PSO, and so that they understand it and you've gone through it with them. And so now they're ready to go. Excited, ready to go. You only have one big problem. Here's the huge, huge, huge problem. From the moment you make the selection to the time they start, sometimes that is a big lag. And that's where you lose a lot of people, because life happens, opportunities happen, and if there is no engagement, they decide, oh, well, they weren't really serious about me. Oh, there's not a whole lot of money in this. Oh, it's not really going to make a difference, and they go on to do something else. You're going to have to look at how you keep people engaged between the time you select them and the time they start. And some of it's anxiety that's setting in. Some of it can be anticipation. It just depends on how you present it. So we have a question, chat question, that will really help to generate some ideas. So what ideas do you think will keep candidates engaged between selection and the start date? So if you could post your ideas in the chat panel on the right of your screen, that would take us to our next part and also select our participants. And Jessica?
Thank you, Cynthia. So what ideas do you think will keep candidates engaged between selection and start date? So as Cynthia mentioned, please put that in the chat panel. Do it to all participants so that everyone can see the things that you're writing in here. So as those come in, let me read some out. So Margaret here says visiting the site. So if you're an intermediary or if you have multi-sites, definitely visiting that site and making sure that, you know, they're in constant communication with the VISTA candidate. Also making sure, this is even something that can be engaged during service, is making sure that the VISTA and you are in communication so that that doesn't get lost. So let's see here. So Carly said inviting them to your organization's event and fundraisers. That's a great way to get them introduced to the staff even before they start. So if you know someone's going to start in 3 weeks, but next week you have a big fundraiser or barbecue or something, invite them. If they can come and get them introduced, and that'll really keep them engaged in that opportunity. Perdita here says sending a formal welcome letter with some action items on the candidate's end. So letting them know, you know, welcome, congratulations, you know, you're selected, you're going to be serving here, really welcoming them so that they feel really included is always a great way. Rebecca here, this is simple and true. I simply stay in contact via email. So can't stress that enough. Communication, communication, communication. You want to be in communication with them. Don't just let it fall off and think, oh, once they're done with PSO or once they come onto site that first day, then we're good to go. Like, you want to make sure you're in touch with them, and that's what a lot of people have suggested here, whether that's phone check-ins or email, as was mentioned by Rebecca. Other things here, meeting the staff ahead of time, organization activities such as that fundraiser or events, inviting them to your social media sites. So, you know, following them on Twitter or suggest that they follow you is always a great way for them to keep up to date and keep you on their mind. More things here are offering to help VISTAs to secure low-income housing. As Cynthia mentioned, we see this a lot at PSO when people come in and they're like, I don't know where I'm going after PSO's over. I don't know where I'm going. And that's a stressful thing. People don't know what to do for housing. Even just giving them resources will really help them and help ease that and make them feel more comfortable, especially if they're relocating to serve. That'll really make sure that they're set off on the right track from the start.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, keeping in touch, answering emails. And Cynthia, I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes. And so as you can see on the slide, next one, and a lot of the things that you have mentioned already, but a call from the supervisor makes a big difference. It says, I'm valuable, I'm important to you, I make a difference, you are expecting me, you are anticipating me, and this is going to be a great experience because I really don't know what I'm getting into this year, and you're making it comfortable for me. It says all of that in the call. I know you didn't say it, but that's what I just said. Okay. The weekly email communication is real important. Again, staying connected. They need to know. This is really scary for some people, especially when they're moving out and they're not really sure what they're getting into, and the work that they look like they're going to be doing it is a very demanding, time-consuming, but such a major opportunity. So how to make them more connected and welcome. If they're coming from out of town, the Chamber of Commerce mailing, where you talk about the attractions in the area, really important if you have other visitors, connect them to other visitors. Even if they're not serving at your site, but you can find out those that are serving in your location or your area, and you can find that on vistacampus.gov. That would be important to make them more comfortable with that. And if they need housing, to not just send them housing opportunity, but someone to be the liaison to make the connection for them. So now, and there are probably many more the ones that you have shared, what we do know about best practices, that is important to begin 9 to 16 weeks in advance of the PSO. And if you are intermediary and you've got to work with sub-sites or with more than just one person doing this, you may need to start earlier with pulling it together so that you can get the preliminary work done and closer to the time for PSO time, and just to make sure that everybody's on board with that. Starting in the spring works best because they are already coming out of college. If they're coming out of college now, these are the people that are looking for folks who are recent college graduates. If it doesn't matter with you, when they start looking at your program, what works best for you. But to make sure that the on-site supervisor is present. I've seen that way too many times. You might need to plan to spend an average of 9 hours per week in the preparation phase. It sounds like a lot, but you can spread it out to more than one person. So you may not do it, but someone needs to do this. So if everybody does 2, or if you can get this automated so that you can spend less time with it. Enlist support people will help you. You can get volunteers to help you with this as well. Utilize word of mouth, crucial, Twitter, Craigslist, or Idealist, and some of the other ones you've mentioned. Recruit for a specific skill set, traits, or national service interest. What do you need? But not only their skill set, you can see the potential there, but what can you train to? This is what I absolutely have to have. Now, what can I train them to do? Or who can I get somebody else to train them to do this? But I need you to be able to get along with people and be a good planner and organizer. The rest I can teach you. So to focus on what's really important to you and develop a clear, well-written DAD. And also consider high-quality, community-based candidates as well. So now what? Pulling it all together, everything we've talked about, recruitment is only the beginning. Effective retention is relying on effective recruitment and ongoing support and supervision. If you bring them on board and you just leave them there, let them figure it out, they will leave. But if you nurture them and guide them and give them the support necessary so that they can be very effective and engaging and develop the skill set that they came to do or do the work that they want to do, you will have a good experience with people. And so now, we've talked about a lot of things during this webinar, and it's been my absolute pleasure to have guided you through this process where we considered how to really think about and plan what you want to accomplish and the skill sets and the talents and abilities that you needed to achieve your outcome. We focused on the best market for your program to attract the best candidates for your large or small programs in your urban or rural settings. We've talked about how to identify win-win situations and to apply that to marketing the positions. And once you have identified candidates, we looked at how to keep those candidates engaged and to build the excitement of them sharing their youth national service. And so now the question is, so which one action or idea will you consider implementing from this webinar? So which one action or idea will you consider implementing from this seminar? If you could please enter your ideas in the chat box and make sure that you send to all participants, that will be great. You know, it's great to talk about all of this stuff, but now the actuality of it. So what will you do? Now what? What will you do to bring this to life? So if you could take a moment, we've got a few moments to just write in what new or what one action or idea will you consider implementing from this webinar that will really help take you to the next level. As you're writing those, I just invite you to consider your expectations. How are you framing this? This is a national resource you're getting, a national treasure, someone who is committing 1 year of their life to service to our country and your community and to making a difference. So this is what they're committing to do. What can you do to help facilitate that? It is not all on them. It's not all on you either, but how to work together to achieve this. So, Jessica, I think you may have some responses.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. So a lot of great things coming in here. So what are some actions or ideas that you're going to implement after this webinar? So Lynn here says that she's going to start earlier to recruit the very best and then plan for engagement in between selection and startup. That is fantastic. Getting the best and then maintaining that and keeping those people engaged, which is fantastic. Angela here said Craigslist for recruitment. Marie kind of expands on that, says expanded marketing ideas, so maybe trying a different approach to recruitment that you haven't tried before. Always a good one, reviewing and improving the VAD, the VISTA Assignment Description. That is critical, especially when they're starting their service, when they're attending pre-service orientation. The VAD is a very, very important tool, so making sure those are the best that they can be is always crucial for success of the VISTA. Review and probably editing the opportunity listing. Leslie here says that she's going to do the College Career Office for recruitment, a great resource to check out. Perdita is going to think about the timeline for recruitment a lot more and identifying the end result and working backwards. That's a great way to look at it, thinking when is my deadline and working on the steps to go back from that on when you need to start. Creating a timeline for recruitment is another big one here. And connecting current members with recruits to help recruits get ready to move and adapt to the local market. So if you are lucky enough to have a VISTA right now and you guys are going to be recruiting for maybe the year 2 VISTA or a VISTA for maybe a different position, definitely utilizing the current VISTA you have to, kind of help talk to the new person coming in. What can they expect? Did they relocate? How does that work? What's the best thing? What's the most challenging thing? That is a great resource. So if you have that, please utilize them. Target retirees as potential VISTA recruits. Cynthia talked about it a lot. Retirees are great resources, especially for VISTA. So, so please take a look at recruiting for retirees. Also, how to keep in touch with VISTAs from position offer to PSO start date. Keeping that engagement is key to ensuring that they start without a hitch. So, a lot of great suggestions. What we're going to do now is going to move on to the Q&A portion of this webinar. But we first want to launch the evaluation. So we want to know what you thought. On the right side of your screen, you will find a quick poll where you can share feedback about this webinar. Please take a moment to answer these questions. We do like to improve our webinars, and we do read your responses, and we try to adapt as we go along. So please tell us what you liked, what didn't work out, what you want to see more of, and we will make sure to implement those things as soon as we can. So just take a few minutes, and we're going to get started on the Q&A. So as Cynthia mentioned, we've given you a lot to think about, and now it's time for your questions, as I'm sure a lot of you have them. You can ask a question in the Q&A panel located on the right of your screen. And I'm going to now ask the operator to let us know how you can ask a question by the phone if you prefer to do that. Operator, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. At this time, we would like to begin the question and answer session of the conference. To ask a question, please press star then 1 and record your name clearly for question introduction. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1 and clearly record your name for question introduction. One moment, please, to see if we have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, operator. And while we're waiting for any calls to come in through the phone at any of those questions, let's answer some that came in through the chat. So one here in that it was kind of touched on a little bit here in the chat and in the Q&A. Luke here asked, aren't they getting rid of in-person PSOs, and how will this affect our orientation and scheduling? That is a great question, Luke. So as some of you may have heard, VISTA is piloting a virtual pre-service orientation, which is a blend of asynchronous online training, real-time webinars, forums, and field assignments. VISTA factors in the on-site orientation, or OSOP, that the sponsor implements. So this new orientation, for those of you who are familiar with the PSO, the current PSO model, which is where people go for about 3.5 days to an on-site training, and then come back and then start service, this is a little different. This virtual online training that we're calling right now PSO Blend is the syllabus covers 5 weeks, which includes 3 hours of webinars, a few variable hours on forums, and a maximum total of 12 hours for field assignments, which may include optional learning opportunities. So, so to answer your question, Luke, we are not getting rid of the physical PSOs. We are piloting a new version of the pre-service orientation, and those will be piloted starting in late February. We are planning, the VISTA training unit here, we are planning on providing supervisors a webinar and some training on this new model coming up here in the very early part of February. So just more information about that's going to come to light. But with regard to your question about timelines, it does change things a little bit. But you still want to take from that start date with the virtual PSO, the start date of the candidate is also the start date of their orientation. So it's tweaking the timeline a little bit, but more information will come to light about how to manage that and what best practices are for that. But definitely keep an eye out for that new information, and we'll definitely let you know as much as we can as soon as possible.
And I just want to add that no matter what the form would be for the PSO, you still got to do all of this other stuff in advance to make sure you've got the best possible candidate to come on board whenever it starts.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. Let's go to the phone here really quick and see if there's any call on the phone. Operator, do we have anybody who's called in?
At this time, I show no questions.
Great, thank you. So some questions that have come in through the chat. Cynthia, I'm going to send this one over to you. What do sites usually do when interviewing non-local candidates? Pay for travel and lodging? I'm wondering if they are asking about paying for travel and lodging for the interview, or do you usually suggest maybe a Skype interview or over the phone, or how would you, what would be your tips for that, interviewing a non-local candidate?
Okay. And I can share what I've done, and also to share what, because I've trained supervisors with this just for a long time too, and what they've done as well. What most people do is to have the interviews by phone and or Skype. It depends on what connectivity the person has. So ideally, you would like to have them in person, but that's not always possible. So to have a Skype interview, whether you do 1, 2, or 3, that's up to you how many you do. But to have a face-to-face, I just think face-to-face helps you to see the body language in addition to, so that you can get a feel for their vibe and their energy. Something comes across in the screen. You can also do the same thing by phone. So telephone interviews, that works, but paying for them to come to site, that's not been an option that most people have chosen. I definitely didn't choose that. I couldn't afford to pay for them to come to site. And Skype and telephone work just as well. And when they come on site, if you talk to them enough, you've got a feel for them. So by the time they get there, it's like your old friends.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. And definitely adding that face-to-face feature, if you can't be in person, is always adds a little bit more than just over the phone. So we're definitely lucky to live in a time where we can do those face-to-face calls even if we are thousands of miles away. So let me go back to the phone lines and see if there's any questions over the phone.
At this time, I show no question.
All right. So we had another question here that came in through the chat. We had referenced a guide about e-grants and how to do the service opportunity listings. And we got a question here about has CNCS completed or considered developing a step-by-step guide to using e-grants? We do. We recently developed this. We recently did a webinar all around eGrants, and Scott is going to be posting the resources that can be found on the Vista campus. It's a simple link, vistacampus.gov/supervisor/egrants, and Scott will go ahead and post that into the chat. So that's definitely a great resource to look at. We know eGrants can be tricky, and this can hopefully walk you through that. But if you have any other questions about eGrants, definitely contact your state program officer, as they are the ones who are going to be able to maybe help you with those tips and tricks of using eGrants. But that's a great question. We definitely don't want that to hinder you when it comes to recruitment. So let me see here. Another question here that came in over the chat. And Cynthia, I'm going to send this one over to you. This is about recruiting members in community. So our other sites, and this could also be for those in still participating to write into the chat, are other sites that serve in communities of color having challenges in recruiting members of color to serve. Are there any suggestions in this area? This is definitely not a question I've received before. So Cynthia, do you have any tips or any suggestions to this person's question?
The tip would be, where you're going to recruit. And my recommendation is, again, to find out what's in it for them. If you are looking at college graduates, and so I'm going to look at it from two perspectives, college graduates, and I'll do high school graduates in the community. So college graduates, their recruitment is focused on, so what's in it for them? People who want to go out and work and to get a traditional job, this may not be the opportunity for them because they are expecting a certain level of salary. And you've got to also be very clear what the stipend is involved with this, because that can be some disappointment after you get down the road, and it's some unnecessary challenge. So looking at the career placement office, looking for the social services in the colleges and universities, social work, sociology, something related to human resources, how people who are focused on helping other people, that's one path. You can look at people who are looking at going to graduate school. So to find out who is going to graduate school, this is a perfect segue between the two if someone's interested. I've seen that sometimes in communities, a community-based component, people may have high school degree, that there are some people in community that need this as a step up. So where people who need to be engaged and involved may not have all of the skill sets you need, but have the knowledge of the community and the passion for the community. I would go to the houses of worship for that. I would go to the nonprofit organizations in the area. I would start talking to my network. I would start talking to, if you're in a program, who in that program would really need these services, or who either use the service or they know someone who has used the service and that now wants to go to another level. This is a way of looking at how do you market it? This is a way to help pay for college. For people who are interested in going to community college or four-year institutions, depends on how much it costs, that this could be the opportunity to help pay for that. So finding people who have that desire, again, it's what's in it for them. And it cannot be the traditional job approach. It has to be, this is a step that will get you to your next step. Finding those people, community-based organizations would do it, a lot of them. People who have actually part of the services, they've gotten the services, houses of worship, nonprofit organizations, civic organizations, your friends, your family, friends and family of the board members, advisory committee members, people associated with your agency, they know people. You got to ask, reach out, touch them. So often we think they know, they understand, and they don't. We've got to ask for help. And that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Cynthia. So one last time, I'm going to go to the operator. Operator, do we have any questions over the phone?
At this time, I show no questions, but if you would like to ask a last-minute question, please press star 1 and clearly record your name. One moment, please, to see if we have last questions.
Thank you, operator. So as we go, we got one more question here through the Q&A, and it is: Are new Vistas going to get a starting or welcome package from Vista? So that's a great question. You know, we talk about what you guys do when it comes to Vistas and recruiting and staying in contact. Once Vistas are enrolled in a pre-service orientation, they do start getting notifications from Vista. Maybe if they're relocating, more information about relocation. With regard to training, if they're going to an in-person training, logistics around that. If they're going to be doing the online training, they'll get more information about what to expect from that. So, so definitely you want to touch base with your Vistas once they do get enrolled to make sure that, hey, did you get this communication? Do you have an updated email address? Are you getting everything that you need? That's another way to make sure that that everyone is on the same page, and to really ensure that that they have all the necessary tools they need to be best prepared to start their Vista service. So any questions over the phone? Did anything come in, operator?
At this time, I still show no questions.
All right. So one last question in the Q&A, and it's for you, Cynthia. Marie here asks, where is the best source to recruit veterans or military family members? What are your thoughts on that?
Veterans or military family members. So now, I would tell you that there are several places I would go to. And one, obviously, is over to the VA, Veterans Administration. There is they have an office there that does focus on outreach and connection to communities that could also get veterans to be more engaged. I would also suggest the Veterans Service organization like the DAV, Disabled American Veterans, and the VFW, and there are some others. But to go to those organizations, some of them have traditional older people, but they also know others that may be engaged. So what you really need is to connect with their networks. So it's not like you're going out to get just one person. You're going to really make a connection with them, for them to make a connection with someone else, to help be the conduit, to be the reference, which also helps you with getting good quality candidates who will honor their word and be engaged in the process. That is another concern, that taking it all the way through. When you got a referral or a connection, they're more likely to be engaged and to follow through and to really be the best possible candidate. So I would use the Veteran Service Organization and also the VA Outreach Office to start that connection. In addition to, I'd go to the houses of worship, the nonprofit organizations, and other nonprofit organizations in the area that know veterans, and ask your friends, how does that work?
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. And thank you all for joining us. We're almost here at the 30-minute mark, at the 3:30 Eastern time mark. So we want to respect your time, and we want to thank you again for your participation. If you have a question, if you get off this webinar and you're like, no, I didn't ask my question, don't worry, we can still answer it for you. If you do have questions or you just want more information, please contact us at vistawebinars@cns.gov. Also, a couple of upcoming webinars we'd love to have you join. Next month, as Cynthia talked about earlier, is Writing Fabulous Vista Assignment Descriptions. It's going to be February 16th. And then in March, we're going to have Crafting a Compelling Service Opportunity Listing. So we're really going through the whole gambit here: recruitment, Vista assignment description, and service opportunity listing. So please join us for those, get those resources, and recruit those fabulous Vistas. Thank you again all, and we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to work with all of you.